welcome all to this exciting episode with our very good, with dear friend Ratan Shardaji. We heard about his books last time and what he has been doing very actively, and we left at a very crucial point of the discussion. And this is what you were asking, that why you didn't continue. Like many of you asked me why we didn't continue, and there was a shortage of time. We are all limited by time, and very kindly he has come back again to ask the next question. And probably if you have more, if you again we'll be limited by time today. So without taking much time of yours, let's bring him on and discuss with him again with follow-up questions. Namaskar and welcome, Shardaji.
Namaskar ji.
So आपने
Nice to be back so soon.
no, in the last discussion you had, you put you the interview was going very. The complaint which I received was everything was going smoothly, but we cut the interview short. And
I think in today's life, as a 40 minutes a long time, I was afraid that people will not see the whole video. But response tells me that people did, go through the entire video. That's
entire
good.
video. So my follow-up questions today will be, and I think there'll be more questions also coming back. And first of all, I want American audience or American Hindus to understand what is the appeasement politics which is going on, and what is the origin of that.
Okay. Well, actually, if I were to answer very honestly, the historical blunder that was done by the Congress leaders of those time, because we can say Congress leaders because that is the only movement which represented the entire independent spectrum, which contained people from left to right, the entire spectrum from socialist to Congress to Hindutvawadis. That was the turning point of Khilafat agitation. Before Khilafat agitation, if we go back a little in history, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, who established Aligarh University, had pronounced in 1886 or 87 very clearly that India has two nations, a Muslim and Hindu nation, and they cannot live together. In fact, he went on to say that it is much easier to live with the other people of the book, that is British, than with the Hindus. So this idea came way back in 87, 86, 1886, 87. And then on he went on to establish the Aligarh Muslim University, and then Muslim League was, established in 1908. So the idea of having a separate Muslim state or nation, or idea of having demanding separate rights and separate electorate, came way back in 1908. The people who blame Savarkar for two nation theory forget that his first book came out with the same laws, equal rights for everybody, and there should be no appeasement on base of religion. But in 1919 or 20, when the Khilafat agitation happened, if just to remind people, in Turkey, Kamal Pasha overthrew the Khilafat and established a secular modern nation. And when those Orthodox Muslims around world, and especially in India, wanted to agitate against it, as the British had overthrown this Turkish Khilafat, and that agitation was for re-establishment of Khilafat, which was actually already antediluvian, out of the current modern history, and really outdated idea. That agitation, Gandhiji saw that agitation as an idea of taking Muslims along for the independence struggle and earning their confidence. With that one step, the Congress leadership, gave up on the modern outlook leaders, educated Muslim leaders, which also included Jinnah, who was part of Congress at that time, and went in for the orthodoxy, the mullahs and Maulvis, and the people who were obscurantist ideas. And that is how the agitation gave fillip to very orthodox elements in Islam or Muslim society, and gave up on the modern Muslim. From that day onward, that entire agitation, which had nothing to do with India, began this so-called appeasement politics. The end of this was very disastrous. We saw in Mallapuram a huge Mopla violence when Hindus were killed, they were raped, they were converted, and then this violence went on and on till 1924 around India, which we generally don't talk about. It was so bad that Gandhiji at that time had said that an average Muslim is a bully and average Hindu is a coward. So the situation was so bad, and finally things slowly turned around, things became calm. But this idea of appeasing orthodoxy and appeasing outdated leaders is what started the appeasement policy.
No, it's a very good historical viewpoint you gave. Many American Hindus are not even aware of that. Now, from the point of view of American Hindus, there are a lot of problem spots within India, which they really want to
I
help.
say to complete the story before we go to the new problem spots. If you remember, if you are a student of history, then the next big violence was 1946, 15 September, what was called Direct Action Day, when Jinnah showed his fangs and said, "We will take Pakistan whether by violence or by any means." And that is the day when thousands were killed, and it was a very planned violence. And by the time Hindus woke up and united and fought back those violent goons, the Congress leaders came in, Gandhiji came in and calmed the water. And then on, the Congress people simply gave up and caved into the idea of Pakistan. That is how we then saw Pakistan slowly, taking roots. And we saw the partition, where again, Congress leaders bowed before the British leadership as if they would not get independence otherwise, and agree to very, very unjust and very, very artificially created, very badly executed partition. We saw millions die and millions move around from one part of the country to the other part.
No, and I think in partition also the lands that they gave were like strategically or not of value to India today also. Like strategically they are at
Yeah.
loss today. So from the American Hindus
Well,
perspective,
since you talk of strategics, if you see, it was so foolish that Kartarpur, for which we are fighting a 4 kilometer corridor, was just 4 kilometers. India could have put its foot down that Sikhs are with us. India belongs to entire Hindu community, so Kartarpur should belong to us. And they just let the knife go through the entire land.
yes.
The Gilgit-Baltistan, the British executed a revolt, and Gilgit-Baltistan was handed over a platter which belonged to the Maharaja to Pakistan under the guidance of Mountbatten. These part of history we don't really understand, and Gilgit-Baltistan, as people are aware, was a connecting point of the Silk Route. It was a connecting point where Dubai was just 3,200 kilometers, and you had, in fact, much closer than Madras in those days. And the entire landmass, you could actually go from one end of from Kashmir to anywhere in the world. That was so important an area. It was full of minerals and all the various kind of natural wealth, and that was given up. And that was, in fact, snatched away by Pakistan with the help of British. And
And
we kept quiet.
Balochistan, we left on Balochistan.
Yeah, Balochistan, of course, different. Balochistan was taken by Jinnah by cheating, because he was the lawyer. He was the lawyer who signed the treaty of non-interference, and the next day he just took it over. Worst fate was the Pakhtuns, who sided with Congress, who voted for Congress, who were against Muslim League, and they were left orphaned. In fact, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan used to say that I've been left orphaned by my leaders. So those two areas, which were typically not interested in Pakistan, were gifted away for whatever historical reasons. But then, yes, it was a partition which was bound to fail, and Pakistan today is facing the problems which were for the seeds of which were sown in 1947 itself.
See, when it comes to history, because history defines identity, and it creates a mindset of a person. History. So many of the American Hindus are suffering from the history told from the leftist viewpoint, and whether it's American universities teaching them or even Indian universities teaching them. So the correct history of I'll give you just one example, that Burma was always part of India, but in 1948, even though Burmese wanted to join us, but the British kept them away, and Burma was always part of India, and those States like Burma or even Pakistan or even Bangladesh, these states cannot exist without India. It is not possible for them. And they cannot even govern themselves properly. And we have seen that they have been destroyed. So can there be a step where we can go back and correct the situation from the historical point of view? Can that happen? Is it a possibility?
See, one thing is that this entire partition is based on religious identity was a failed idea from day one because religion cannot be really defined as a has not defined nation anywhere. You need people of the same culture, you need people of the same mindset, which was not there in Pakistan. Pakistan is controlled by Punjabi gentry, Punjabi landed gentry, and other parts of the Pakistan are just there, and they are just ready to implode anything. It's question of time, whether 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Similarly, Bangladesh in no way belong by culture to Pakistan. So the way they treated Bangladesh, it is never part of it. So see, there is an interesting story which I heard personally from Goenka Guruji, who has founded Vipassana, as you know, and Vipassana came from Myanmar to India because Vipassana had disappeared. Then he had very serious physical problems, migraine and all. He took very a big amount of drugs and could not get cured. So a yogi met him, Buddha monk met him, and he trained him in Vipassana. And he said when he got cured, he was so thrilled he gave up his business and he started propagating Vipassana. So his guru told him that this is a debt we owe to Bharat, and you must go back to Bharat and you must re-establish this Vipassana in the land of origin. So that's how he came to India and established Vipassana. So he told that somewhere in 1950s he met Nehru and he gave an idea that entire Southeast Asia bloc, which is Buddhist, and India and surrounding areas which are Hindus, this entire belt, Hindu-Buddhist belt, is a very strong bloc, and we must give it due consideration. It can be a very powerful bloc of nations who can actually withstand the pressure of Western world and the Western civilizational sway. And Nehruji said, "Kya baat karte ho Goenka ji? What are you saying, Mr. Goenka? These are poor backward nations. Look at West. That is where you should be influenced." So that day, this look east policy was not there. It was only after Vajpayee came that he started look east policy. I think Narasimha Rao ji also had some idea, but then Vajpayee made it bigger. Then he also took interest in the PIOs and NRIs. Till that time, if you ask your seniors, the Indians outside Bharat are supposed to be a liability. The ambassadors will tell them, "What are you doing here? You chose to go out of India, so we don't owe you anything." From there, treating them as an asset was started by Vajpayee ji. We saw the result that when nuclear explosion happened, Indians with very big heart gave money to overcome the sanction that US had thrown at India. So from that historical perspective, this look east policy of BJP has been around for a long time, and that is the reason why Modi ji is paying so much of attention to supporting SAARC nations, ASEAN nations, and he has even tried to sidetrack Pakistan, which is trying to derail the whole idea. And this entire approach of Modi ji is to create a block of these countries because if Maharshi Aurobindo way back in 47 said, it's an artificial partition, it will have to go if India has to come to its own glory and lead the world as Vishwaguru. So that prophecy was there. And that told us that if not by uniting geographically, in some way or the other, these nations must come together because that is the only way these nations can progress. They can become powerful and they can be a counterpoint to the mad rush that Western world went into by, like I told you last time, conquering the nature, taking science to absurd lengths when they try to control entire human emotions and thoughts. And that is something very different from what the Eastern thought worldview has been. So that is where they will have to come together in some form or the other, whether it's a federation, whether it's ASEAN, whether it's SAARC. But that is the way tomorrow will happen.
No, it brings to my last question because I think you have to go for an interview. Is that why do Hindus in general all over the world? Because Pakistan has a history of Ramayana, Mahabharata, has many temples, has important. Jayadratha was a leader of Sindh as recently as in Mahabharata time, and after that, Raja Jahir Singh and his son Raj Singh.
Well, Gandhari, the fulcrum of Mahabharat, Gandhari came from Kandahar, Gandhar. So we have a very long history there. So
So India's first line of security is Afghanistan, and that's where U.S. President Donald Trump was always asking, "And why doesn't India send to Afghanistan? It's your backyard." So when will that mind shift happen, where we start treating these territories as our Hindu lands and take some proactive action?
see, we cannot say it is our Hindu land, is Bharat land. Now some religions have changed, some cultures have changed, but their ancient links remain. The love that Afghanis have for Bharat is known to everybody. The love for Afghanistan show, emotions they show for India is always there for everybody to see. But whether India has been working in Afghanistan in a big one, a constructive way by providing infrastructure, by providing various facilities that will help Afghanistan come out of poverty and come out of badly hit infrastructure, that is there. Whether to go there militarily or not, something very strategically to be decided by Indian government, and whether the force will actually win there, because as you see the history of Afghanistan, it has never been conquered. It has never been able to solve the problem militarily, whether Russians came or Americans came who pushed in Taliban. So it's a very different question which cannot be answered easily. It's very serious strategic issues. But culturally, yes, the entire, as I said, Pakhtuns, the Balochis, the Sindhis, their roots remain with India. Their culture remains with India. Their longing for India is very strong. Similarly for Afghanistan. So culturally, these parts will have links with India. As I said, Pakistan, whether implodes in 5 years or 15 years, is a matter of time, because it is just held together by a very selfish, very powerful military elite. How long they can carry, we do not know. But ultimately, its future to me seems very bleak.
Thank you, Ratanji. And you have opened up many
And
more
see, you talked of, I just complete the question on, appeasement. Just to put in perspective, this entire narrative of terror was created to appease certain groups of people when the terror of those Muslim groups around the world was becoming very harsh, when continuous Islamic attacks were happening with the help of Pakistan in India. So twist the narrative. The government of that time, led by Congress, brought in Saffron terror story that led Pakistan off hook. That is the worst kind of very debased kind of appeasement. And one more very serious, very horrible thing that happened was a communal violence bill was brought in just to appease the Maulvis, because Indian Muslims don't really listen to Maulvis, are not really bound by Maulvis, illiterate or poor people may be afraid of them. The communal violence bill was brought in, which was the total focus was Hindus. So the bill said in its wording, more or less, that if any riot happens in an area, the majority community will be held responsible for it. If anybody puts in a complaint, the person will not be identified. No reason will be given, and the person accused will be picked up by the police, whether bailable or unbailable warrant, and that person has to prove that he's innocent. The person who accused will never be, his name will not be disclosed. Nothing will be disclosed. And tomorrow somebody knows me and puts in an accusation that I led the riot. I have no other way but to prove my strong alibi, my strong evidence to come out of it. So it was the most horrendous kind of bill, which just to please a few people was brought in to make Hindus look like violent people and goons. And luckily, because of the uproar, it was given up. This is the kind of appeasement which is most horrible. Forget the small favors given to communities. That is something that we have learned to live with. Or the appeasement and the reverse appeasement, discrimination, where minority institutions are free to run their education institutes, their temples, their mosques and churches, but Hindus don't have that right. So this reversal of appeasement, or rather than your reverse discrimination, is what Hindus have faced all these years. We hope that this at least reverse discrimination will go. This unnecessary appeasement in the name of religion, which is very easy to do, rather than looking at the welfare of minorities, taking them to path of progress. That is what is required. Instead of that, they were fed on to very easy to handle ideas like emotional blackmail and a sense of insecurity created against them after so many years. And the funny part is that the most secular government, Bengal, under 30 years of communists, after the report was published, the Muslims were more backward than they were before the Communist Party came to power. So this appeasement policy doesn't work. When BJP is supposed to be communal, it has given much more bigger amount of funds and done much more for the welfare of minorities than the earlier governments did. So this entire story has to fall apart. People have to realize that everybody has to have same standing in front of constitution. Everybody must have same laws and same facilities.
So one thing about Hindus, I will say that's a joke. So please don't, and nobody should mind that. Is that सारी दुनिया का बोझ हम उठाते हैं, लोग आते हैं और फिर चले जाते हैं. So that has been the mentality of Hindus for a long time, and we have to stop.
I would put it in a even more blunt manner, that the secular communist historians have made it, they made history such a way that poor Hindus have to keep on proving they are good boys. So in the search of being, given the medal of being good boys, with their conduct, in spite of all the best things they have done for the world and for the society, they keep on, proving themselves that they are nice people, good people. But their tradition is so why should they, really get into that? Entire Hindu community which came from Trinidad, Jamaica, lived their cultural life through just Ramcharitmanas, just imagine.
Absolutely.
And still they came up. So that is the story of Hindus. That is the story of Hindus, not what we are told by others.
Actually, and I really want to welcome some of our viewers from Indonesia and Bali, Americans who have settled in the US from there, and also from Fiji. The many Hindus who from Fiji, they watch our channel regularly. And some Bangladeshi Hindus from New York, I'd like to recognize you because you have been supporting us every time. So Ratan Shardaji, thank you for speaking with us, and
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. My next interview topic is already ready because there is a popular demand.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for bringing me on the show, and all the best to you. And I do hope Hindus become very assertive in USA, and they see to it their misrepresentation is, changed. You have great Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard, who has been very forthright in putting up the issue of Hindus, and we should support people like those people. And whether Republican or Democrat, that doesn't matter, but they have to put across their point across the political spectrum that they are the best possible citizens and best possible assets of US nation.
I will speak to you on all that thing offline, and then we'll talk. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.